between good and evil, and some, like us, bear witness. I'm Therese Apel.
And I'm Nicole Kral. You may have heard us as we worked on stories and series about law enforcement and crime. And it's safe to say we've seen some of the best and worst of human nature.
We decided there's no greater honor than bringing you the stories of the men and women who seek out the monsters, who speak for the victims, and who put the pieces together on some of the biggest Mississippi crime stories of our time.
Welcome to Investigation Homicide.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Investigation Homicide. I am Therese Apel. I am here with Nicole Kral.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, and we are here to bring you a case that you guys, if you're in Mississippi, you have definitely heard of this. And it has probably kept you like searching the internet, maybe not kept you up at night like some of us, but it's definitely been one that if you are someone who is interested in this podcast, you are interested in this case. We're here to talk about Myra Lewis, the 2-year-old that went missing from Camden, Mississippi, back 11 years ago, March 1st. And we have Sheriff Randy Tucker from Madison County here with us to talk to us about it. Sheriff, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Good evening. Thank you for the invitation to be here with you guys tonight. It's one of those cases that needs continuous light until we can come to a conclusion with it.
Absolutely. Now, Nicole always does her research. Do you want to give us a little bit of background on just kind of what happened that day?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that the most, and it's in your headline on your article, it's that it's the longest standing Amber Alert in Mississippi. And it's been 11 years, and that Amber Alert is still out. So Myra Lewis, she was 2 years old at the time, and she was playing out front in the yard with her friends out at her parents' house. Her mother was leaving to go to the grocery store, and she told the kids, go ahead and go inside with your dad. And she went to the grocery store. So almost an hour goes by. She comes back, and she comes inside, and she asks the dad, where's Myra? He goes, well, I thought she was with you. And she goes, well, I thought she was with you. And now this whole situation unfurls of where's Myra? And I think the most frustrating part about this, and I'm sure is very frustrating for you, Sheriff, is that there's just not a lot of information here. There's not, you've gotten leads from all over the country, but just at the very core of it, there's just not too much to go off of at this point. Back then, you were going through all of the channels of trying to figure out how to get this resolved. And I think we start off in the best way possible is just kind of starting from the beginning, telling us how your day started that day and how you got that call. So what was that like for you?
Well, it was generally like any typical call you would get about a missing child. You go out there with the expectation of surely the child is playing with another child in a neighbor's yard or at a relative's close by. But this particular day, when you pulled up, everything was, as far as friends and family, was really very centrally located in a very small area. I'm talking about houses that were less than 25, 30 yards apart. Aside from that, you had large wooded areas, pastures, ponds, things of that nature. So it was pretty readily apparent that she was not there in the immediate area. So suspicions grew pretty quickly that, hey, this child's missing far beyond the norm.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did was first of all, you go back to the basics. You search the house immediately because we've been on these calls where, laundry on a couch would cover a child.
Kids hiding
or
in
maybe
the
they're wrapped
closet.
in a bed sheet taking a nap or playing hide and seek in the closet from their siblings or what have you. And that took several minutes, but it was very readily apparent that the child simply was not there in the immediate area. So you start calling in other resources, whether it be canines or drones, possibly. The child had wandered off in the woods. Kids will get out and build forts and travel trails and ride bikes and those types of scenarios just weren't available to us. to where we could readily locate her. So the, I don't want to say panic, but it was a very concerning set of circumstances from the onset that she wasn't readily in that area.
Right.
Now, let's talk about just the perspective too. And you and I were just talking about this, but it was one of the first major cases that I covered, within reason, when I had first come to the metro area as a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And you had been sheriff for what, about a year at that
About
point?
a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah. So even you'd been a cop for a long time, but how did this strike you when it happened? Like, was this the first major thing like this that you dealt with as the sheriff?
Well, actually, it was actually the second 3 days in. I had a barricaded subject. That was kind of the icebreaker. But certainly, this particular case was really the groundbreaking of what would ultimately lead to where we are here today, and years of frustration. In that, you really didn't know where to turn, who to call. Obviously, you start looking for help immediately beyond your agency, beyond your capabilities. And, we reached out to our state partners, whether it was Highway Patrol, the Game and Fish, the FBI, outside agencies that had tools to go beyond what we were readily able to provide. You need investigators there on scene that have dealt with this type of disappearance, abduction, to conduct interviews of persons and to even broaden that out into the community where the last known locations, gathering videos, gathering witness statements. So, it was a really quickly concerted effort to get as many resources as we could. The National Guard played a really huge role with their air support systems that they had, coming in and being able to do grid searches of the areas. The churches, that community up there really, really came together very quickly and solicited their memberships with boots on the ground to conduct, foot searches, and then all kind of other factors begin to play into your mind. Did she wander over to a lake? Did she fall in? There were some open cisterns in that area. Did she fall in a cistern? So that's when the panic really sets in. Is when you start to realize that there are so many plausible things that could happen. You really, really need a lot of help, a lot of volunteers to be able to get every one of those scenarios covered.
Now, talk to us about, as you bring these resources in, of course, you start off with your agency and then you're bringing in, Highway Patrol and that kind of thing. When do you bring in the canines?
Well, you really want a canine early on. Canines generally operate under the guise of one scent, and we didn't want to contaminate an area with so much human scent from persons that weren't the focus of what the canine would be looking for. So the earlier you can get them in on the investigation, the better, as far as targeting a specific scent and isolating specific areas of concern. So it's vital. It's very vital.
So when we brought the dogs in on this one, what happened?
Well, there were two key areas that, and when we're saying canines, I want to be very clear that you have tracking dogs, and then law enforcement uses another type of canine that is considered a cadaver dog. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, we didn't want a cadaver dog. We were still in the early phases. We hoped and prayed that we would be able to utilize a bloodhound or a trained tracking dog, and Madison County has some of the very finest available to us. But there was one key area, and it was located within the yard of the residence. That dog did not want to leave the immediate area where the mother had described the child having been playing when she left, and the vehicle that the mother was ultimately driving.
What would that cause you to believe? Like when you have that situation with a dog, what does that tell you? What's the dog telling you?
Well, anybody, I'm a former canine handler myself, so, you have to trust your animal. Their ability to smell is in parts per billions. Ours are in parts per million, and I guess the best way for me to describe that is that, if you pull into your grandmother's yard at Thanksgiving, you can, she's cooking dinner, but you can't quite smell it yet. That dog can.
Right.
When
Yeah.
you get to the house, you go, oh, she's cooking dinner, and I can smell it. She's
From a
cooking
mile down the
she's
road.
cooking a turkey. She's got casseroles cooking. The dog already knows that, so their ability to decipher scent is so much greater than ours, and the canine's reaction that day was so overpowering as to that dog was intent that child was in that car.
Wouldn't it make sense that the child would be in her mom's car at some point?
It made sense to everybody there.
Right. So, I mean, you have a kid, you drive him around often. This was a tracking dog, correct? Not a cadaver dog that hit.
That was a tracking
Okay.
dog.
So if he's hitting on these scents and then he hits on the mother's car, isn't that just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense? Or was it suspicious?
It wasn't suspicious to law enforcement at all. But when you're working with a scene like this, you have to really be careful, because it would not be out of the ordinary for a mother to have her child in her car.
Right. Yeah.
Perhaps the child got in the car without the mother's knowledge before going shopping.
Yeah.
You certainly don't want to get into a situation where you're making an accusation
Right.
in something that fresh. But the other type of dog that we utilized was a cadaver dog. And that particular canine was very adamant that the dog alerted to the back end of a side-by-side SUV, which we thought was very strange, at the time, because there would have been no need or no explanation, I guess is a better term, for that dog to alert with that child's scent to the back of that SUV.
What is a tracking dog looking for and what is a cadaver dog looking for? Are there different, like, one would be the scent of me as a human, the cadaver dog would be the scent of my decomposing body or blood, or
that's very close. A cadaver dog is looking for a scent that humans put out, pheromone type scents. A cadaver dog is looking for the expulsion of gases, and there is a difference. So, the fact that neither of those dogs left that yard, the canine, the original canine, not wanting to leave that vehicle, and then that cadaver dog wanting to not leave that side by side. It was very suspicious.
Yeah.
Now, I know that during this time, you guys also dragged some ponds, and you had, drones up and that kind of thing. Talk about the timing on this, because I feel like I remember, and it's 11 years now, but I feel like I remember The dogs came in, what, the second or third day, or were they there on the first day?
They were there on the first day.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, again, and when you focus last known physical spot of the child where anybody can verify that child, and which the mother did. Erica told us the child was sitting right here.
Mm.
So, you know, from there you move outward. And there were two different ponds that were around that property, one directly across the street, obviously. Now, we had already gone through the process of the bus drop-offs and had any of the other children or had any of the bus drivers. We'd interviewed those. Nobody had seen her. She had not gotten on the bus, not gotten off the bus. So then you start to grow that area from that initial sighting. And, you know, ponds are very attractive to children. You know, they're just natural curiosity. They like to see ducks and
They're attractive to me
fish
too.
and
I
things
love
of that nature. So yes, we've got several outstanding fire departments, you know, in Gluckstadt and Madison and Canton that came up, and they have the sonar ability to be able to put those boats in and look with their sonar at all different angles to try to identify any objects. And we did identify some objects, but you know, those guys also have divers that go down, and any object that they see, they can go down and physically touch, grab, recover, and all of that was to no avail as well. There was no way she was in that water.
I remember too that it was pretty quickly. I feel like maybe the second day on the scene, I remember standing there with Tammy Estwick, who was with Channel 16 at the time, and she was on the phone at one point with Nancy Grace.
Mhm.
And I spoke to some national news organizations that night too. It wasn't immediate, but it was almost immediate that the national news was on this. And I remember tips coming in from all over the place. Talk about what that does to an investigation like this.
Well, you know, when it reaches that far, that quick, you know, you don't want to call it a knee-jerk reaction, but it's really tough to zero in on the tips that are significant to your general area, because you're right, you were there and Tammy was there and you guys did great work on that. I must say, getting the photos out, the information out that we asked you to get out and what we felt was pertinent to help us in our investigation. And, you know, you get calls from Connecticut and, you know, Rhode Island, California, and logistically, there's just no way she could be there that far yet. So you kind of have to sift through those and get us back into an area to where you're looking for the aces in the deck of the cards, you know. So all the help is greatly wanted, but it really takes time to zero in and on what is the best information at hand at the time.
Now, shortly after that, I remember there started to be rewards. And usually when the reward comes in, that's when you start getting more chatter. And it sometimes, in some cases, feels like that's when the useful stuff starts to come in. But in this case, what happened?
Well, you know, we had, and I can't remember the dollar amount we started at, but I will back up just a little bit and say, you know, we had notified our FBI partners, you know, in Washington, and they had sit down their child abduction and recovery team, their CART team. A lot of those individuals who I knew personally, so I had their numbers, and they were here quickly. and developed a plan and put money behind it. You know, I don't know if it was federal money or state money at this point, but uh, generally you think if you can throw enough money out there quickly, persons or any person that may be involved would be more intrigued, anonymously or otherwise, to call and get involved and say, "Hey, this you may want to look at this, or you may want to look at that." And we did have some of those tips. One thing that a lot of the general public doesn't realize is that there were two or three churches in the area that were actively conducting or getting ready to conduct burials in the days that followed, and we ended up going and searching some burial sites. I think you may remember that.
Yeah.
And actually excavated one, fearing that maybe she had been put in one of those. And so the money that we thought we had out there, and it was significant, and I think it remains at $50,000 today.
That sounds right. Yeah.
We really thought that would generate some new leads, some fresh leads, something tangible. We did get some of those leads, but it never was the piece to the puzzle that we were looking for.
Now, I've worked some other cases that had really large rewards like that. And when you don't hear anything on something like that, what does that mean in an investigation when it stays that quiet regardless of the size of the reward amount?
You know, in my experience and the experience of some very tried and true investigators, that tells me that the circle of persons that were involved were such that it was so small that there's really nothing outside of that unit that anybody could know to share with you. And I firmly believe to this very date that there's the people that were on that property that day know exactly what happened, know exactly where Myra is, and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. And at this point, I've always maintained that I will never close it as a death investigation, and I won't. But as you know, the further you get away from an incident, the reality is that the chances of a successful live recovery become slimmer and slimmer.
Sure. Well, and so the first several days, first several weeks even, you've got all hands on deck. And then as cases go, at some point you have to start sending people back to their daily duties. What did that look like for you? Because you were sold out on this case from the beginning. And you still, every time I talk to you about it, and if I'm not mistaken, I do want to add, last time I was in the sheriff's department, her missing poster is still up.
Her missing poster is still up, and I get, as you and I last time we talked, I still get emotional about it.
I do too.
And every year on the anniversary, I get calls about it from various media outlets, and they want me to do an update. And it's very frustrating for me to be able to sit there and say, well, I just don't have anything that I can offer you right now in the way of an update. We still get tips. I mean, not just from locations within this country, but certainly other countries. And I still hold out hope that one day I'm going to get to hug her neck and say, my, how you've grown. But, the reality is that that's probably not going to happen. I really genuinely feel like, I feel like the parents uh, at some point the conscience is going to catch up to them, and they're going to, one or both, are going to have to tell what happened.
I think that's the question that so many people have. And we've got a comment up here. The mom never cried or showed emotion. I'll never forget this little girl. And that was a discussion. And the thing is, I stand by the fact that you can never really gauge somebody's emotion or lack thereof in a situation like this because everybody reacts differently. But you spent time with these parents. It wasn't just, oh, I saw her on TV and she wasn't crying. You actually spent time with this family and you got to know the people around it. And over the years, that's, I mean, to a certain point, you guys all stayed in touch with them too. What have you seen as this case has aged?
Well, you say we've spent time with them, and initially that was true. But there was very little emotion on either side of the parents, to be quite honest with you. It's my opinion that the father figure was a domineering figure, to the point that other persons within that family are scared to offer fact or opinion about what may or may not have happened. But he had some pretty, and I'm referring to Greg. He had some things to say to me that what I could go do to myself, and
Yeah.
things of that nature that I won't repeat here. But he was just completely emotionless, and I would say this as a father: if my 2-year-old little girl came up missing, you would have to pry me away from that scene, from that sheriff's department. I just don't know that I could ever get past it. I would bug you every day. That just hasn't happened, and in fact, this entire family, from father, mother, grandparents to everybody, has completely vacated that area where they all live, not just the house pertaining to the disappearance, but the entire 2 or 3 house area there. They have completely vacated it, and I've got a theory behind that. And I don't mind offering it to you at this point.
Sure. We'd love to hear.
People generally, whenever and this is just through experience, people generally commit a crime. They don't want to stay around for the fallout. They're afraid that the reminders of every day are going to eventually erode their resolve to be strong enough to fight it away, and that maybe they may crack, or maybe their emotions are getting the best of them and they're going to leave. We have not heard from this family in years. You would hear from me every single day till you found my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And we've not heard a word. We don't have a contact phone number for them. We are quite frustrated. We've had others reach out to them. We've had other persons within the Department of Corrections that have reached out claiming that one of the family members wants to come clean, but that is yet to happen.
Sure.
So you hold out hope that the doors aren't closed, and that, if for nobody else's benefit other than Myra's, I hate to think that she's stuck somewhere between earth and heaven, waiting on somebody to set her free,
Sure.
to get her to a point to where she can rest and enjoy eternal life with our Lord. But until somebody gives us that piece of that puzzle, or somebody that played a role in that clears their conscience, we're no closer than we were.
It's interesting because, of course, we do a little research before we do this podcast, you know, and I went to her mother's Facebook page, which
I
still
did
has
too.
her picture on it. And I remember during the time, and I don't remember why, but I remember one of the family members yelling I worked for the Clarion Ledger at the time, and yelling the Clarion Ledger or something in my face. And so I had not through the years tried to contact them again, but I know a lot of other media did. But I wondered if Erica would be watching, or if she would eventually listen to the podcast. And Erica, if you're out there and you want to talk, we would love to hear from you. And we would love to know if you want to tell us your side of the story. Sheriff, through the years, this has been something that, as we've talked about, people have reached out from all over the place. And actually, if you're watching or listening now and you want to comment a question or whatever like that, we can address those as well. But the last few times we've talked, and you've kind of alluded to it now, but, you know, I remember at one point we were interviewing you, maybe it was the first year anniversary, but you said, I believe she's still alive. And I know that there's a certain level of you have to give yourself some room on that. Like probably she's not, but you have held such hope that this would one day be solved. How does that, is that hard? I mean, I don't know the right question, but it just feels like that's a kind of faith that in my position, it's hard for me to understand.
It's extremely hard. My wife will tell you, you know, I mention her name often, and I know she knows that it eats at me, but this is that one case, you know, and you can question any law enforcement officer that's ever had an extended career, and there's always that one case that they can reference. I do hold out hope that she's alive, you know, but that would mean, in my eyes, that she had been trafficked in some form or fashion, whether it were for financial gain or some other illicit way. But I would love to be able to find her, to help her restore herself, to help her get whatever help she needed. Not for me, but for her. I don't know that that'll ever happen, but I think she deserves a chance. I mean, she was 2. She deserves a chance to have a full life, to make choices, to be a professional, to have her own kids, to live life as Christ would want it to be lived, and that was taken from her. You know, it was just flat taken from her, and I would beg Erica. I have no doubt in my mind. Erica knows what happened, and I could sit down and look her in the eye, and I would I would beg her to help me give Myra that.
What were the conversations like before they kind of cut off communication?
You know, there was a time where I really thought that Erica wanted to do the right thing. I really thought that in my discussions with her that you know she was this close, but I think Greg had such a stranglehold on her, and you know other children involved. I believe he was the intimidating factor, whether it be through threat or whatever means. that he held over her, parents or otherwise. I just believe he wasn't going to let it happen, and he didn't. And Greg's, I'll be quite honest with you, he's very intellectual, and in my investigations or interrogations with Greg, he's one of those persons that there's about 5 stories he can tell you all at once, and he bounces from one to the other. So it's kind of left up to you to decide which track he's on and put those stories together. One may be true, none may be true, but he's not going to tell you if or when all of them are. So he's very intellectual. He's got a couple of degrees. So it's frustrating, but I can tell you he's one of those people that he listens to everything that you say. He dissects what you say, and kind of like on the old movie, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" I've counted to 3 and said my piece. That's it. He's through talking.
Sure. The memory that I have the most of him was that somebody told me that he had taken the family dog to go look for her. And my thought was, I mean, Rover's great. If you could take any of my dogs to go look for me, and they would look for squirrels, and they would look for dog biscuits, and they would look, but they're not trained to do that. And I think that the comment that was made to me by the officer that told me was that, when the dog didn't find her, that was it.
Well, I can tell you how callous this guy is. Whenever we got the initial call and responded, when I walked in that house, he was sitting on the couch in what we call a wife beater, a tank top undershirt, playing a video game.
When you walked in.
Mm-hmm.
That I can't even play video games when my dog is missing.
No. That would be the last thing on my mind. Yeah. Playing anything.
So I guess my assertion here tonight is that the people that were in that house, those children, Greg, Erica, and quite possibly the grandparents, know what happened, but I'm not sure anybody outside that circle has any idea what happened.
In an investigation like this, are you allowed to speak to the children at any point in time and get their stories about? Because allegedly she left her with her siblings playing in the front yard, and they were old enough. I mean, around 4 and 7-ish, maybe.
Well,
is that allowed? You're allowed
to ask children their names and what have you.
Right.
But as far as the investigative role that you want to conduct with them, there are CIC is who you generally would need to go through to conduct any investigation.
Who is that?
That's the Child Advocacy Center.
CAC. Okay. Yes. Sorry, I misunderstood.
I'm sorry. I think I said CIC. CAC. And the telling part about that is that a lot of the times that the parents have the right to know what you're asking their children, which kind of defeats the purpose because, depending on how children are reared and saying what mom and dad want them to say, they're not going to go against their parents' wishes. Now, I will say this, in interviewing some of the children's and family members of children and bus drivers, that there were some statements made that possibly a day or so before Myra was reported missing, that she wasn't at school and didn't ride the bus, where the parents said she did. So
And I didn't even realize when I was reading it because they did all the interviews, but I think she went missing on a Friday, right?
I don't remember
I
the
can't
day of the
remember what
week.
day it was
I
either.
think I
There's
saw it that it was on a Friday, and I didn't realize it until you said something about school earlier. I was like, oh, none of the schools
yeah.
were like, but I guess, I mean, I can go look what day
Yeah.
it was in that year, but I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere.
And there were a lot of
March 1st.
misstatements made by both parents as to whether or not Myra was with the mother and grandmother at different locations throughout town, and which days and what she was wearing, and on those days as compared to what she was wearing the days she was actually reported missing. I mean, there are numerous, finite details that just simply do not add up. And again, I'll say that Erica and Greg both they know where that baby is, and if they've got any conscience at all, they could just tell us.
And at this point, with it still being an open Amber Alert and an open investigation, you wouldn't. I understand that this is a cold case and that it's gone this long without being solved, but you've still got it as an open investigation, don't you?
Absolutely.
This,
It'll never be closed as long as I'm in this office.
so at this point, if someone were to come forward now and give you some information that leads to finding her, they could still get that reward.
Absolutely. 100% of it. And a big hug from me.
Yeah. And sometimes years after something like this, somebody who knew something at the time or didn't realize they knew something at the time, or someone who in this story might be a child's friend that the child told or something like that.
And that's a very good point. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that one minute piece that we may need, they may know and not even realize that they know it, whether it be a piece of information from timing of a video or a location or any number of things. It's really frustrating that, I really think the community has provided all that they can knowingly. It's what they could probably provide unknowingly that's really frustrating.
Sure. Well, and you mentioned video, and I hadn't thought to ask this in 11 years, but if the mom went shopping, if the other family members had gone shopping, did you have any kind of like surveillance video from stores or anything at the time?
We did. And that was what was so frustrating, was that some of the clothing described the day of the disappearance was actually some of the clothing that was described from a day or two prior. Now, I'm not saying it's uncommon, child to wear this one day and wake up and, hey, I'm going to wear the same shorts that I did yesterday or the same T-shirt, what have you. But those are things that matter. And, I'm sure Greg didn't wear the same wife beater the day before, but they know.
So at this point, Nicole, is there anything do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was just going to bring up real quick that they did the interview. I'm not sure who the interview was with because the name on the YouTube video is really weird, but they did a pretty lengthy interview with them and the kids in that park. Did you ever see that?
I have not.
I think like we have a comment that the mom never cried or showed emotion in that interview.
Was that the one where she was sitting on the park bench?
Yes,
and,
correct.
Okay, yes,
that one.
I
She did show emotion there, and did you do interviews like that as a sheriff and as a department? Do you look at that and try to look for clues or human behavior and stuff like that?
I do look at those videos, and just as a person, it looks scripted to me.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so. The children had no interest.
They were kind of diddling around and
Yeah,
like poking at him,
To
and
be talking about a long lost sister, they had no interest. And everything that she said was scripted, which I'm sure she was fed by.
good old Gregory.
Yeah. But
And it took her a while to come to tears too, because I was watching it and I had the same sentiment. I was like, I don't. But again, everybody reacts differently. And when my stepdad passed away, I didn't cry at his funeral, and I thought I was a sociopath. You know what I mean? I was like, but when you're in that kind of closed off headspace, you just kind of block everything out. I can understand why, especially if you're doing an interview, just disassociate for a minute.
there will come a day, God willing, there will come a day that I'll get the peace that I need, and I will get to put handcuffs on somebody, and she will be, Myra will be set free.
I want to be there. I want to be there when that happens.
I'll call you.
Yeah,
Also like to
seriously.
be there.
Daniel, our producer, would also like to be there.
I'll call you.
Yeah, that's going to be a big day. It's going to be a really big day. You always kind of hope for that. And
it's always when you least expect it. It's one of those out of the blue things. And
yeah. I'm wondering now with like DNA testing and stuff that I was talking to a friend the other day where we both know people who did their ancestry, and one of them found out she was adopted, and then the other one questioned whether she was adopted, but never went further into it. She was like, you know what? I don't want to know, but I wonder if with ancestry DNA testing and stuff like that, if she ever decides to, because she would be 11 right now. 13, right?
Yeah,
Sorry,
13,
math.
13.
My bad. That's not really the age. Like I didn't do a DNA test until I was in my late 20s. So maybe one day, stuff like that, it'll tie her back, and she'll be like, wait, something doesn't seem right here.
If she was abducted, she might not
Even know who she is, right? If
Yeah.
somebody just happened to, but it is a rural road. I did the little Google. I went all the way down the road on Google Maps, keeping and going, and it's so wooded out there. It's so wooded out there.
I really would like for anyone to know that this is an open investigation. It's still active. And all you've got to do, we don't need your name. We just need your information. And you can call the Madison County Sheriff's Department at 859 or 601-859-2345. You can ask for me personally or our investigative unit. They all diligently work on it. So I'll be glad to talk to you. I will never not be available to talk about it.
Well, and also we should say, this anniversary is coming up. It's March 1st, so we're looking at just a couple of weeks. And, of course, as you all know, I run Dark Horse Press. We will have a story, as we do every year. Other media people, if you happen to come across this, feel free to use clips of this interview. Just give us credit. Do whatever you need to from this if you want to. But to me, I think why you're here is a couple reasons, Sheriff. The obvious one is that people have been interested in this case forever. But one reason that we do this podcast is to show the human side of these cases and of you guys in law enforcement. And I feel like we have to keep this alive because it's not just about Myra. To me, it's about you guys that worked the case. Y'all deserve an answer as much as she does.
Well, we want to keep her alive.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's our bottom line.
Absolutely. Anything else, Nicole?
I think I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to see you again.
We really appreciate your being here, and you're welcome back anytime you want to come.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple comments. Such a horrible incident. We will never forget. I still pray for Myra. Jennifer said, I wonder about her often. I hope peace for her little soul. Morgan said, such a sad case. And Tammy said, I think of her often. I think that's been the general sentiment of the general public is I think everybody just wants answers. And with stuff like this, when she pops up, and it's a good thing, you bring it back into people's minds and bring them back into, because like we said, you never know.
Never know.
Well, and in Mississippi, we have certain cases that go down in Mississippi history as our famous cold cases or, old cases. And we've had Annie Laurie Heron, we've had What Happened to Chandra May, that kind of thing. Myra Lewis is right up there with all those others when we talk to our audiences about the cases that need to be solved that never have. So it's right there.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, you guys are going to get it, and I believe that.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Sheriff. We appreciate your being here with us.
Thank you.
And to our listeners and our viewers, thank you for watching. Again, we know 5 o'clock on a Thursday is a weird hour, so just watch this later. If you haven't had a chance to watch the whole thing, it'll be here on Facebook. You can also download it at your favorite podcast place. And just if you have any other questions, comments, whatever, you can leave them there on the thread, and we will answer them. Thank you for joining us. We are so glad to have you here at Investigation Homicide. Have a good night.
Bye.